a group for Georgia that I don't think has been discussed that much this offseason when you compare it to a lot of the others is the tight end room for the Georgia Bulldogs. This is a unit that had high expectations post Brock Bowers, right? But is that fair to put those types of expectations on a group that has to follow up who may be the best tight end in college football history? I mean, the accolades speak for themselves. Multiple time national champion, multiple time Mackey Award winner, all of that. And they had Darnell Washington, who is a contributor at the NFL level as well on that same tight end room. And you follow that up, and you get Oscar Delp, you get Lawson Lucky. You had Benjamin Urasek, someone they went out into the transfer portal and got. But overall, Georgia's offense just didn't perform to the level that it needed to be a championship level offense. And look, I say that to say this is about championships. And the context in which we talk about the Georgia Bulldogs largely is going to be in the context of, is this good enough to win, or at least at the very minimum compete for a national championship? That is the context we have to view the Georgia Bulldogs through. So if it's not that, it's not good enough, right? And that's the standard that Kirby Smart and this program has created for itself over the last few years, and that's just how it is. But the tight ends, I think it's a group that, one, I do think you will see a little bit of improved play out of. Now, I'm not saying that they were bad. They weren't bad last year, but it's a group that I think does need to do better if Georgia wants to get back to having a really, really good offense, which it had for a few years. And then last year, it took a dip, and it wasn't like an upper tier offense in college football. But I think it needs to also, when you have Gunnar Stockton out there and you're having all this transition in the offense, all this transition on the football team, I think that the unit is going to be more important for a quarterback that hasn't. Look, he's been in some big spots, right? And those are kind of the only spots he's been in the last year or two in postseason games. But a quarterback that Georgia's rolling with, that, look, the fact of the matter is a lot of people are doubting Gunnar Stockton and are doubting what this Georgia offense is going to be, despite bringing in the transfers, despite getting some players out that really underperformed last year. So I think that the tight ends will be important to help out a Gunnar Stockton-led offense, and I'll get into reasons why here right now. Ryan Curley from Dawg Post. Make sure you're checking out the website, dawgpost.com. Make sure you are checking out the newsletter, checking out all the deals we have. Just go check out dawgpost.com, and you'll see everything that you need to see over there. It's a great way to stay up to date with the Georgia Bulldogs as well. So when you forget about the numbers that Brock Bowers put up and what he meant for the team, and how he was a number one option for 3 straight seasons, and he was the guy you go to in the fourth quarter if you really needed it most of the time, right? You think about the Auburn game in 2023. You think about the Alabama National Championship game in 2021. Who do they go to at the end of the fourth quarter? They go to Brock Bowers. He is that guy, right? Well, Oscar Delp was next in line to be tight end 1, right? And look, pretty good athlete for that 6'5" frame, 6'5", 240-ish, and a good route runner and good hands and all that. And the expectation was that Oscar Delp, and I think that the expectation Oscar Delp had on himself as well, was, hey, this is my year where I'm going to be the primary guy. I'm going to have, whatever many yards, touchdowns, and the eye test it takes to be a top 3 pick in the NFL draft. And Georgia's going to compete and compete for a national championship. I think those were all the expectations that Oscar Delp had on himself. He comes out, and he is Georgia's tight end 1. They're mixing in Benjamin Urasek and Lawson Lucky as well, but Georgia likes to have multiple tight end sets, and they like to rotate a little bit at that position. Well, Delp comes out, and he just wasn't really productive. When I go to the game log, so I have the numbers out in front of me, had his first catch in week 2, then had a couple catches against Kentucky, Didn't record a stat against Alabama. All of a sudden, we're a month into the season and he has 3 catches. Didn't record any stats against Auburn, right? So he's going multiple games without making an impact in the receiving game. Now, Oscar Delp is an improved run blocker from where he was early in his career, and a lot of that has to do with the coaching, the development, and bulking up. You see a lot of players really bulk up from that freshman year to sophomore year, and Oscar Delp was had one of those transitions that was really noticeable in terms of his size. Ends up making a really big play against Texas in that game in the fourth quarter. Kind of helps seal it by getting Georgia into enemy territory on a trick play. And then he doesn't score his first touchdown until Tennessee, and he really pops off against Tennessee for 4 catches, 56 yards, 2 touchdowns. So it took him really until November to get into the end zone, to be a part of bigger plays that mattered, right? For the first 2 months of the season, he was really only a part of one big play, and you're not used to watching that when you watch 3 years of Brock Bowers making big plays every single quarter of every single game pretty much. And the expectation was Oscar Delp was going to take this step forward and, maybe not quite be a star, but be a very, very good and productive tight end. And that just didn't really happen. He scores against UMass and he scores against Georgia Tech, so he really got it going in November, but the majority of his production is in that final month, and he ends up only with 248 yards, 4 touchdowns, and on 21 catches. It was Lawson Lucky that ended up being Georgia's most productive tight end. Now, he didn't have a ton of production either. 24 catches for 348 yards and 3 touchdowns throughout the entire season. So when you add them up, they add up to be what? 250 plus 350? It adds up to be about 600 yards and 7 touchdowns, which, adding them up together, that's not even the production that Bowers was getting, right? We're talking about him getting 900 yards, double-digit touchdowns. So when you add up the top 2 tight ends on Georgia's roster a year ago with Lawson Lucky and Oscar Delp, their production just didn't even match what Bowers was doing alone. And this is not to compare to Bowers, but it's to just kind of give you perspective what you can get out of a position group like that. And they just didn't really get that. Now, when you examine Georgia's offense closer, they didn't milk enough out that they needed in general, right? The run game was poor. The passing game dipped from 23 to 24 in a significant way, both by yards and by touchdowns and efficiency in general. And Georgia just didn't really have go-to weapons. And these tight ends are some of the better recruited tight ends in college football, and they create a group that's really good in terms of stars. And Lucky and Delp, these are 4-star tight ends, and I think you're going to see another 4-star in Jaden Riddell this upcoming year, and they've got 5-star tight ends behind them. It's a group that has a ton of talent. Is someone going to step up and be really good? Well, Gunnar Stockton likes to throw the tight ends. You saw that in the Texas game, how they schemed up plays for him to get the ball to Oscar Delp in that overtime. And I think you're going to see the tight end schemed up a little bit more with this Gunnar Stockton offense. It'll kind of go back to the way it was with Stetson a little bit. I think you'll see more rollouts. You'll see more of those RPO action plays where the tight ends are more involved near the line of scrimmage. I think you're going to get a little bit more of that type of play out of an Oscar Delp, out of a Lawson Lucky. I just think they're going to be more involved in this offense. And look, big, sure-handed targets are also really important for offenses that, look, we don't know. We don't know if Zachariah Branch is going to be a star. We don't know if Nate Frazier is really going to step up and be a star running back. The truth is, we don't know if Gunnar Stockton is going to be this ultra-productive quarterback or not. But I do think that there's a reason why Oscar Delp came back. He told us he was distracted last year, that he wants to right those wrongs. Lawson Lucky wants to win a national championship. These guys who weren't on those national championship teams, they want that. I think the tight ends are hungry this year, and I think that you'll see a little bit of improved play out of that group. What do you think about the tight ends? And we appreciate you watching.